Well, hello, and welcome back to that thing we like to call Curless Mania, where we talk all things pop rock and prog. And you guys know how excited I get when I have a new guest. It's just, and this time it's my excitement is through the roof. I don't know what to say. I'm thrilled to have this gentleman on my channel. His name is Matt Williamson. Matt, welcome. Thank you so much for coming today.
Well, Tom, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being asked on your show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were just talking before we hit record. I mean, he has a channel called Pop Goes the 60s, and it's fantastic. If you're not familiar with it, you will have to go check it out immediately. I'll put a link below so to the channel, so you have to go check it out. He just finished a series on the monkeys that was just fantastic. So, um, worth. I mean, if you're at all a monkeys fan, you it's like essential.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
There's so
that was
much
a
to
hard one to
monkeys,
do.
right? What's that?
That was a hard one to do because there's a lot of backstories that behind the scenes stuff that people didn't know about the monkeys that I thought was germane to the whole story and kind of talked a little bit about the personalities between them and how kind of a miracle that they got together anyway and were so successful, but then they couldn't maintain it.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that there was a little subtext in there that was like there was some chemistry with the monkeys because they wouldn't have been so successful. There was something there, you know?
For sure. Yeah, there's an energy in the 60s in general, and I think that that just took over, and a lot of bands were riding that, and even though they didn't always get along, the Monkees would be one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember showing this is back when Netflix you actually got like DVDs in the mail and we used to get Netflix and I ordered the Monkeys series because I wanted my daughters to see it.
Oh yeah.
And they loved it. They loved the show. Like they were like, "Oh my God, Mickey's so funny and I love Peter and I love like they loved it." And it was like how many years later when a different generation and they loved it. So,
Yeah, it was just a decade where there was a lot of new people on the scene that just didn't know the rules. And the Monkees producers were kind of like that. They brought in people that they weren't TV people. So it gave a very spontaneous kind of a show that's still fun.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we are here to talk. We're not going to talk about the Monkeys today. We are talking about the band. I reached out to Matt and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing some material on the band on my channel, and I figured I would start with the debut music from Big Pink." And there's a lot to talk about with this record, and we're probably going to go in a lot of different areas because it really was a seminal record in the late 60s, and it was something that wasn't expected, I think, at the time, and it really created there were a lot of influence from this one record. Um, I'll just do a quick rundown real fast and then we'll jump into it. It was recorded in early 68 in New York and LA, released July 1st, 1968, produced by John Simon. It came out on Capitol Records. They were originally signed as the Crackers by Albert Grossman, who was Bob Dylan's manager. And they were kind of known. They were at that time. The only reason they were famous was they were Dylan's backing band because they had toured with him in 1966 and got booed most of the time for the electric set, right? Um, and then they ended up kind of going up and hanging out with Bob in Woodstock, and Big Pink was this rental house that in Saugerties, New York, and West Saugerties, and with Rick Danko actually rented the house, and they Garth Hudson and Richard Manuel lived with him, and they became this headquarters basically for like recording and hanging out and with Dylan and the band. Um, so really, this record is very tied. This album is very tied to the basement tapes, right? Because the basement tapes is kind of where things gestated and started with this whole thing. So it really informed the sessions in the summer of '67 when they were in the basement of Big Pink, and that's kind of how it all started. So that's kind of my little rundown. But when was the first time you heard this record, Matt?
Well, I heard the singles on the radio. I heard The Weight, of course, and that was the one song I knew off this. Chest Fever was another song I'd heard. I Shall Be Released. That was a song I didn't know that was done by the band and just knew other people covered it as some kind of protest song.
Right.
So I knew about the band. Everybody talked about the band at some point. It just seemed to be at, by 19 mid 68, the psychedelic hangover was pretty much done. Everybody was kind of waking up and say, well, we got to get back to something a little more earthy because this is just going off the rails, which it was.
Right.
And I think that's where the band came in, and their timing was very good. And I think that the time with Dylan, they just, they really worked. They had been working together for a lot of years at that point.
Hmm.
So I think the timing was good, and they had enough songs written, and they were learning, I think, to write a little bit, being influenced by Dylan during that time with them. So they came out with a really finely written album, great songs, and you wouldn't think that this would have been the new trend.
Yeah. Do you think that their time with Dylan in the basement probably helped them in their writing quite a bit? I mean, because they were known as a great band, but they weren't really writers yet.
Yeah, Robertson had been writing since the late 50s, even, but I know that the time with Dylan had to have an effect on them and just structuring songs and just, I mean, how can you not learn from Dylan? I mean, they spent a
Yeah.
lot of time with him. I mean, Dylan never really allowed that of anybody, really. And, this whole idea of them kind of holding up at that house in New York after the very mysterious motorcycle accident, which I've always never really bought. I think this was just an excuse for Dylan to get off the road. I think it was getting to be too much for him. It wasn't that successful of a tour. The fans were not all responding well. So I think it was a time for him to pull back as well. And he needed some guys to, I think, bounce ideas off of because he was kind of alone.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's where the band came in.
No, that's interesting. I was going to ask you that because that was kind of my theory too, is that, okay, I think a motorcycle accident did occur. I mean, but I think he really milked it. I think it was like he recovered pretty quickly, you know, but he was like, I don't want to go back on tour again, so I'm not going to milk this, you
Well,
know?
he's the ultimate man of mystery, and this is where he really, I think, had took the opportunity to play that to the max, and good for him. He's a private guy, and fame didn't really wear on him that well, I don't think. So I think this allowed him to kind of go into hiding a little bit
Yeah.
and, get lost among some other players, which ended up being the guys in the band.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 66 tour, as we mentioned earlier, it exhausted him. I mean, it was a very tiring. I mean, it was very dramatic, as you were talking about, people booing and walking out, and it was like, it was really kind of his white hot period where he had just done Blonde on Blonde, and he was, he was taking drugs to kind of like get get going again, like at speed, or I don't know
Hmm.
what he was doing, but he was, I mean, there's a, I'm sure you've seen this, the clip of him and Lennon in a uh, driving in the back of a
Oh
limo
yeah.
or something, and
Hmm.
it just Dylan just looks like he's completely out of it.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I guess that was not unusual. I mean, to this day, I mean, you're gonna find
that's true.
musicians, but yeah, I mean, Dylan. I think he always wanted to do rock and roll, and in '64, when he started going on that path, he was kind of one foot in, one foot out. But by this time, I think he knew he had to kind of do his own thing. So,
Yeah.
I think that's part of the going into hiding and just putting some space between him and the fans.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And he was also, another part of it was, he had just gotten, yeah, I think he had gotten married to Sarah, and their children were coming into the picture, and so he
Yeah,
was
that's
kind of
true.
feeling more the domestic pull as well. Like, I just want to be home for a while. So I think that played into it as well.
Yeah, it
Um,
did.
yeah, but I
So he
think.
says.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So he pulls the band up to basically hang out. Like, I think you're right. I think part of it was like, hey, let's get some friends up here. So, and they came up there, and at first it was to work on a film. I think it was called like Eat the Document or something like that, and it was
Hmm.
this kind of surreal film that they were working on. And then eventually they got this house, Big Pink, and it became, like I said, this headquarters thing where Dylan would just kind of like come over, with his dog Hamlet or whatever, and and they would just like start playing. And I think the sessions originally started at Dylan's house, but it moved to Big Pink. But yeah, they just started kind of jamming on covers and just having fun, just like let's just have some fun. I think that's kind of how it started. Would you
Yeah,
say?
and I think his manager, Albert Grossman, wasn't going to let a good opportunity go to waste. This guy was one of the sharper guys in the 60s, and he made sure that Dylan was recording songs. He fully intended to get those songs published and then pass them out to people who might want to use them because Grossman was thinking, hey, Dylan's not going to tour anymore. I bet in order to make some more money, we got to get some songs out there into the hands of other artists.
Yeah.
So I think that was always part of the plan, and that's kind of where this basement tape thing started. Is really one of the first bootlegs, and it was actually whatever they compiled. It was handed out to people in the industry, some of, especially Grossman's other clients like Peter, Paul, and Mary. So they had first dibs on some of these Dylan songs. So that's kind of the start of how it all germinated, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and I love that part of the story that, Albert Grossman's like, okay, we're gonna make some money out of this, and I'm gonna figure out a way to make money out of this jamming in the basement thing. So he starts, sending out these acetate or whatever they are, tapes of songs, and then the Birds end up doing what? You Ain't Going Nowhere. Uh,
Mhm.
and I think
And
nothing
this
was
Wheels
ever
on
heard.
Fire.
Yeah, This Wheel's on Fire. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think Too Much of Nothing was done by Peter, Paul, and Mary. That was in
Yeah.
'67. So that was
Yeah.
probably the first one recorded, not surprisingly, because they were part of Grossman's stable.
Right.
Grossman put Peter, Paul, and Mary together, actually.
Oh, he did. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and actually, they were the first one to have a hit with a Dylan song. Most people say it was "It's Not Me, Babe" by the Turtles, but no, it was Peter, Paul, and Mary with "Blowing in the Wind" in '63.
Oh,
So they Grossman understood the pop charts, and he, I think, also understood that Dylan could write pop, which he did quite a lot of the basement tapes.
yes, he did. He did. There's a lot of catchy material in the basement tapes for sure.
Hmm.
Okay, so we're just going to go a little bit. We're going to stay on the basement tapes for a minute because it's so important to the story. So the basement tapes, as you had mentioned, basically it was sort of like this whole thing of where's Dylan? Like this is pre-internet. Nobody knew where he was like kind of gone for a while. And it was like you said, it was like Dylan was such a big figure at this point. It was like then back then if you were missing for a couple months, it was like, well, where is he? Like 6 months was like a huge deal, you know?
Hmm.
So it was kind of this mysterious thing of like what happened to Dylan? Where did he go? And you know, who, people didn't understand that he was doing this recording and writing all this time. And then like you said, I think the first hints people got of it were that other artists were doing his songs. And but where was I going with this? So basically, you know, he's missing. There's all this mystery, and then this thing, Great White Wonder, comes out, which ends up being this bootleg of the songs, and it's just like this white cover with somebody just stamping Great White Wonder on it, and it comes out, and people just go crazy. It's like, oh my God, what is this? It's like the Holy Grail.
Yeah,
Um,
I think people were just excited to get something they weren't supposed to have
yeah,
because, quite frankly, the basement tapes don't sound very good. I mean, they recorded it in this house. It was horrible acoustics, and
right.
I think it's just, hey, we've got something that nobody's supposed to have. And I
Yeah,
think that just fueled, and everybody wanted to be in on the new Dylan thing. And that
yes.
was their way to kind of get up on everybody else. So a few of these were out there for people to record. And I guess Quinn the Mighty Eskimo was probably the most famous one.
Oh, that's right, Manfred Mann, right?
Yeah, Manfred Mann.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's such a
I,
strange one. Isn't that a weird song to pick of all the songs? It seems like an odd one to pick, but it worked.
it did work, and Manfred Mann, who struggled on the pop charts, they just could not. They were writing hits and giving them to other people, and they were having hits with them. But Manfred Mann couldn't buy themselves their own hit at this time.
Right.
Somehow they did it with this song. I don't know how, but they did it.
Yeah, it's an odd one. It's definitely a different song. It's but they're like, yeah, I do like their version of it too.
Hmm.
And then I always think of like with the Earth Band when they did Springsteen later. It's kind of interesting. They do the singer-songwriter thing. But yeah. So anyway. But yeah, so that and then basically the basement tapes ends up coming out officially in 75. And this is just like a snippet of what happened, right? I mean, this is just a small.
Yeah, that was one of my probably my first. Well, the first basement tapes I heard were aside from what was on the radio, I guess, or songs that were covered, where it was Bob Dylan's biograph in that box set in '86, I believe it
86
was.
or something. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that was my kind of introduction to these basement tapes, and then I heard about the '75 album, which is kind of there were some new recordings on there, so it's not very legitimate. I mean, they had to spice up the songs a bit,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
So
Right.
the basement tapes were eventually released, the Bob Dylan bootleg series just more
That's the
recently, like in the last 10 years.
yeah, this
There you
group.
go.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so that was, I think for me, that was kind of the official, it's probably not everything, but most everything you'd want.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. It's interesting because this record, you said this version it was done by Robbie Robertson, I think mostly, and he kind of worked on it. He took the lead on it, and like you said, there's some things on here that are kind of like they're like demos for music from Big Pink. They're not really basement tape songs. They're kind of after the basement tapes, you know?
Yeah, that album, which came out in 75, is kind of the end of the band's career, really, where they just had toured with Dylan. So it made sense for them to have this come out while they're touring, or while they had just toured with Dylan in 74.
Mm.
So, and then they did Planet Waves with Dylan. So there's this band Dylan stuff. Let's get the band back together. So I think it just made sense from a timing perspective. And it was nostalgic because the band was starting to kind of dwindle a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely. I think their career is kind of like you kind of feel like it just as it goes. I mean, there's just problems that occur, and yeah.
Yeah, and Dylan hadn't really been around much either. Blood on the Tracks came out the year after, or
Right.
or at roughly the same time as the Basement Tape. So I mean, Dylan was still kind of coming back himself. So it's always nice to fall back on the nostalgia of your prior group and release some unreleased stuff. I think that's what that was all about.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I think the band really needed it. It was like one of those like they needed a shot in the arm, and this that was what, kind of gave that to them. So, but yeah, so so basically what happens is Dylan kind of starts at the end of the summer of 67 or fall 67. I'm not sure what the timeline is, but he basically says, well, I'm going to go to Nashville and go record, like I'll see you later or whatever. And he kind of goes and he does John Wesley Harding kind of by himself with studio musicians. So the band are kind of reading the tea leaves a little bit like, oh, Dylan's kind of like doing his own thing, like he's taking off or whatever. So they kind of think, well, let's get our stuff together. Let's start working as like the band again, or whoever we are. Let's start doing this by ourselves.
Hmm.
And like you said, Robbie had been a writer. You're absolutely correct. He wrote for their original leader songs for what was his name? The original
Ronnie Hawkins.
Ronnie Hawkins, exactly. He
Hmm.
wrote songs for Ronnie Hawkins. So you're right. He had been writing for a while. But people like I don't, I wonder if some of the other members were a little bit more like kind of stepped up a little bit more like in the writing department because of hanging out with Dylan for sure. Um, so so anyway, what is your take on this record? Like how do you feel about this album generally? What's your general
I
take on this?
Yeah, I think it's the best album, and song for song, it's the one I like the most songs on the first album, and I think they're still kind of feeling out who they are, and there's a little bit of more of a rawness to it, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think the songs on it are really strong. And even though there wasn't technically a hit on it, The Wait was eventually a hit for Joan Baez in 71. But that would have been the song that was on FM radio. Probably a couple others got FM play. But they immediately were like the thing of the summer of 68. And I think the Dylan connection, because he had been gone, that mystique moved over to the band. And the sound that they had on the music from Big Pink was just this new, totally, what would you call it? It's just a very earthy sound that
Yes.
would
Yes.
change production because we came out of the Sergeant Pepper era, which had all this orchestration and lots of instrumentation and lots of production technique. Well, this album is the antithesis of this. And this is right when the industry was starting to go what they call now country rock. And this
Yeah.
album gets thrown in that a little bit as well. So it's just a return to like the earthiness of Americana, really.
Yes, absolutely. No, earthiness is a great word. I was thinking like, some people say country soul. I mean, there's a lot of different like words thrown about, and Americana is another one that gets thrown around a lot. Kind of the beginning of Americana music kind of thing. But yeah, no, I mean, but it's real. I mean, it comes off the grooves of this record, this sort of soul and this feeling of like you said, the sonics of it. The drums are like kind of muted and kind of quiet and like there's no guitar heroics
Hmm.
happening. Like Robbie's very serving, everyone's serving the song.
Right. There's no lead player that stands out. There's no lead singer that stands out. I mean, their singing is, rudimentary. Is Levon Helm the lead singer? Is Rick Danko the lead singer? Is Richard Manuel the lead singer?
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and some of the voices blend together really well. I don't know if that's from playing together so long, but sometimes you can't tell one from the apart when they're singing together.
yeah.
So yeah, they really blended well together and sounded like an actual group.
Oh, absolutely. Because they were, I mean, they were legitimate. They, like, used to your point, they had been together for so long, and I really think that they did have a built-in chemistry that was happening with them because they had been on the road together for ages, and it
Hmm.
was just it kind of came out. I don't think it was that difficult for them to put this record together, um, and just sound pretty effortless at doing it. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, to put this in perspective with the Beatles, they were playing together since the late 50s, just like the Beatles. Very few bands were like that. CCR was one. A lot of bands got picked up and put together very quickly. And the band was one of these groups that they just knew each other forever and played together. And they, I guess, dug a very deep groove. And that's very true of the Beatles as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And there also was some mystique happening with this because right because this album comes out, okay, it's a painting from Bob Dylan. He actually that he did that apparently.
Hmm.
And then, all you see on the back is music from Big Pink. You don't see any pictures of the band. You don't see any. It's just kind of it's sort of and I think Albert Grossman loved to play up this sort of mysterious vibe. Like let's just not do a lot of interviews. Let's not, you know what I mean? That and people know that you're Bill Dylan's backing band, and like you said, you said something about the mystique kind of falling into the band. It's true. It's very true. Like the Dylan mystique kind of like seeped over into the band a little bit as well.
Yeah,
You
for sure. In fact, I think people called the band Big Pink because they didn't know they were called the band.
know? Right, right,
Because so there was
right.
even kind of confusion over the name of the group, which is understandable.
Yeah, that would make
And
sense.
great photo, great album cover, great painting. It actually has that psychedelic coloring to it that kind of crosses over into this new sound. So
Mhm.
that also worked.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. And you were saying something about the earthiness, and we were talking about a little bit about how they recorded and what they did, and it's interesting because Clapton was one of the big, huge champions of the band early on, and like Cream couldn't be more removed from, you know what I mean? Like Cream was like, I think that he was so tired of the hero heroics,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that had to be completely exhausting after a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think he was ready to like, and when he heard the album, he was just so prepped, so ready to change. And I think
Hmm.
he was when he heard it, I guess he was telling everybody, "Oh my God, you have to hear this album. It's amazing." Um, yeah. So, and then obviously another huge convert was talking about records that were influenced by Big Pink.
Yeah, yeah. Harrison, the only band he really seemed to go for was the band. I mean, he loved Dylan, obviously.
Right.
And when, Harrison was getting a little bit pissy during this period, 68, 69, and he used the band as kind of a way to get at Lennon and McCartney. They're the greatest band in the universe, and
Yeah.
Lennon and McCartney were going, well, we're not bad ourselves, George, but
Right.
so Harrison spent some time with them in 68 and when the water was really warm for the band when they were just coming up and everybody's in love with them. So
Hmm.
Harrison was spending that time with the band. Meanwhile, the Beatles things were way past that period.
Yeah.
And Harrison mistook those warm waters with the new group, the band, as being how it always will be.
Yeah.
Which 18 months later, the band was, you know, going off the rails themselves.
Things
18
change
months
quickly with
later.
them. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it is kind of interesting. But yeah, their sound was, and it's never was really duplicated. I mean, people were so enamored with their sound and the whole production, that sawdust feel, the barn
Right.
feel.
Hmm.
Very few people could reproduce that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I do think there's a lot of attempts on All Things Must Pass to replicate that sound.
Yeah,
Like you
George
said,
didn't have it in him. I mean,
but he had
the
Phil
people,
Spector as a producer, so
yeah, yeah, he had the wrong elements together. A lot of the players couldn't have really done that. I think the players that got the closest to the band sound was going in the same direction the band was anyway during this time. That's Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they're the ones that really, and again, those with the exception of Graham Nash, that's more American players than one Canadian. In the
Hmm.
band, you've got four Canadians, one American, and you've got this strange amalgamation of, I guess Northern Americana.
Right, right. I never, that's a really good point. I never really thought of CSN and but you're right. You're absolutely right. And it's because a lot of people cite them for Americana influences as well. So, but yeah, and then here's another album that was apparently very influenced by the band. Tumbleweed
Yeah.
Confession. Yeah. In
Hmm.
fact, they even played it for the band and said, "We want you to hear this. We're not trying to, I mean, we're just we just love you guys. We're not trying to rip you off." We or something
Hmm.
like that.
That's a great Elton John album. I love that album. And yeah,
Yes, it's
Elton was a
very
big
good.
fan of them. Well, there's a reason why on the next album he's got a song called Leave On.
That's right. Yes. Levon lacks his money. It's so good. Um, but yeah, so I just think that the album just really was like it was such a different thing, and I just think people, and to your point, it was very unique. It was harder to create than you thought. It was like you said, it was people would try and it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I think it was a breath of fresh air for a lot of people that realized that, hey, this is the new thing. And with all the outdoor concerts going on, that seemed to be more of an earthy thing as well. I mean, it was kind of either you were doing volume super loud or you were doing singer-songwriter. And there
Right,
wasn't much in between. Well, the band was kind of in between, and they could go both directions really. Well, not loud so much, but they bridged that little gap, I think. So if you were to imagine what a really good band sounding live would sound like in a club, you would put on music from Big Pink.
right. Exactly, exactly. And some of what's interesting is some of the stuff on Big Pink sounds almost like a high fidelity version of the basement tapes at times. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Uh,
very true. Yeah.
you
I
know,
mean, Dylan never sounded as good as music on Big Pink from really, well, maybe when you get all the way up to Blood of the Tracks, but
yeah.
I never thought Dylan's stuff sounded anywhere near as crisp and clean as the band's early stuff.
No, no, it didn't. And I don't think Dylan cared much. He'd just be like, just hit record, let's go. Like he didn't care about like producing the album well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I never understood Dylan's use of instrumentation. I mean, he had good players. He was using Nashville guys. These were great players, but he didn't really have a vision, I don't think, for them to take it beyond his lyrics.
Right, right. Exactly. No, I agree with you. It's interesting. I mean, and I do think Robbie did have a little bit of a bit of a vision for the band, in the beginning at least, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Robbie Robertson's lyrics, they're you can understand them. I mean,
Yeah.
it creates a wonderful picture. Well, strangely enough, of like 19th century Southern United States.
Hmm.
She wasn't even from the United States, from Canada. So he, for whatever reason, he must have been enamored with that, but he really painted a vivid picture for the listeners.
Hmm. Oh,
And
for
there
sure.
was not surreal like Dylan stuff. It was quite literal.
Oh, absolutely. No, he was telling stories that you could kind of
Hmm.
follow, whereas Dylan would just go like all over the place. You didn't know what he was talking about half the time, but it was usually kind of fascinating because it was so elliptical and strange.
Hmm.
Yeah, because you listen to like Blonde on Blonde, you're like, I don't know what half these songs are about. I don't really get it, but
Yeah, I'm still understanding Dylan. I'm still kind of in, Dylan 101, or like I'm in grammar school for Dylan still. Some people, because I'm not a lyric guy. People
right.
who are lyric people often gravitate toward Dylan in a way that I don't, because I'm a music guy first.
Yes.
So there's
Yes.
certain Dylan stuff I like a lot. And the Basement Tapes have got a couple things that I really like because of the music.
Yeah. No, you're right. I am too. I'm more of a music person. I'm definitely music first. And then if lyrics are good on top of that, great. It's more
Hmm.
like an extra.
That's a bonus.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So how about Beggar's Banquet? Do you think that was influenced by the band or not really?
Well, you know, probably somewhat. I don't remember the Stones talking about the band, but to me, there's always this question of who had the first country rock album.
Who did it
And
first?
people and
Exactly.
people
Exactly.
fight about it. But
Right.
really, I mean, if you really understand what was going on, is everybody was already going in that direction. It wasn't who
Yes.
got
Yeah.
there first. It was
Right.
just a natural progression. So the
Right.
Stones, I think, just were naturally progressing there, just like the Beatles and the Byrds, everybody, Buffalo
Yeah.
Springfield. It goes on and on.
Yeah. I mean, Buffalo Springfield really was like, I mean, it's funny because I have a soft spot for like sort of the country rock, especially the early country rock stuff. Like you said, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, the Graham Parsons stuff, the Flying
Mhm.
Burrito Brothers, all of that stuff, and Buffalo Springfield as well, right?
Yeah, and to me, I've always found all that rooted in folk as opposed to country.
Right.
And some of these people would sneak in some country because that's just what they grew up listening to. That was around. And Parsons was the guy that really shoved it down our throats, I think,
Yes, yes, right, exactly. And to your point, I mean, Beggar's Banquet is 1968 as well, released. So like
Yeah.
it's all kind of similar timing.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, no expectations is a great example of, that more country flavor that you wouldn't think the Stones would do, but the Stones did it better than a lot of other people did it.
yeah, they did.
Probably better than any British band that I can think of right offhand.
No, you're right. Absolutely. I mean, and it kind of comes to fruition even more on like Exile on Main Street when they're doing some
Yeah.
of this country and they're even countryfying even more. And you're like, wow, it's still working. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's probably because those guys stayed close to the blues, or they went back to the blues after that psychedelic misstep they took, I guess you could say.
Right. So there we go. So there's another. I was going to bring that up earlier and I forgot. So now we're coming back to it. So I think, Sergeant Pepper obviously was sort of like the pinnacle of like this sort of a psychedelic record or whatever. And it's like nobody could top Sergeant Pepper, right? So it was like people were
Hmm.
trying and it was just like dismally failing. And it was like even the Stones, did like Satanic Majesty's Request, but that that actually it's funny because a lot of people revisit that record and kind of they think it's actually pretty damn good, but at the time it was kind of panned like, oh, it's just like a pale imitation. So so what's your take on that? Do you like that record? Do you like Satanic Majesties at all?
Well, I've always loved psychedelic music. So when I was a kid, when I got to be like 12, 13, 14, I was into that 67, 66 to 68 period, the
Hmm.
Pepper Magical Mystery Tour.
Yeah.
So Satanic Majesties was one of the first Stones album I bought. In fact, I had a greatest hits or something, but I think that's the first proper album I had of the Stones.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I've always liked it, but I've been around and studied enough to see the ebbs and flows of how things come on and off the charts over the decades. And in the past, when that hit its 50th anniversary, everybody by this time was all kind of revisiting it, and everybody loved it. It's like everybody loves it. But really, if the
Yeah.
perspective is it as a copy of Sergeant Pepper, I mean, it falls so short. And the fact that it was
Right.
so much of a copy, it deserved to be ridiculed.
Right.
So
Right.
all these years later, younger people have no understanding of how close that came out to Pepper and how much of a copy that was. That it wasn't the Stones being original; it was the Stones following a trend. So
Right.
that's why the Stones got hammered for it. And some of the songs in there are horrible, like "Sing the Song All Together." I mean,
Oh, yeah.
man, I mean, some people may like that song. I find that to be that should have never been released, probably. But anyway,
Yeah.
the psychedelic period was a period where a lot of people who were not good players could pass because you have all the studio trickery, and these things were thought to be profound if you were on LSD. So
Right.
that covered
Right.
up a wealth of mistakes and poor writing and just poor musicianship. And
Yeah.
the Stones got back to business with Jumpin' Jack Flash. They
Oh
okay,
my.
let's do this.
They
And
definitely
nobody could
did.
do it better.
Yeah, they definitely did. Jumpin' Jack Flash is tremendous, so they really got back on track quickly. But I mean, okay, we're on a tangent. Okay, but we're gonna stay on a tangent for a second. What? So Satanic Majesties. I always say, what if Dandelion and We Love You were on that record instead of Sing This All Together? I would be like, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
time
that
out.
yeah, that would have changed things. I would obviously those two songs added to that would be two of the top five songs on the record.
Yeah, yeah,
And they just yeah, a lot of the British acts didn't have a good understanding of how to put an album together.
right.
And the Beatles were just finally learning. And
Yeah,
this idea of keeping some bands kept the singles apart from not always, but occasionally you'd have singles that were standalone,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that would sometimes hurt bands more than help them, especially during this time.
Yeah. And it's, I think there was like a little bit of a thinking back then that, you were ripping people off if you put out the single and then put it on the album too. Um,
I think that's a retroactive excuse. I
is it
think
okay?
yeah, I never heard people say that, in any literature during the time it was going on. I think that was just somewhat of a how they did it. I'm not sure. I think if they could rip off people, they would do it
It would do it
every
anyway.
time. Oh, you better believe it, man. It's all about making money. If they could
Right.
have released two singles of the same thing and two albums and could have sold it, they would have done it. But
Yes.
it was still a young rock music was still very young.
Yeah.
And once you had the FM dial come in, that changed everything.
Yes, absolutely. So this is something I have to ask you, but heading back to the band again. We're going back, and that is one thing that makes these first. I always say these first two band records are like, they're above for me. They're the two
Hmm.
that are really high above a lot of a lot of their other records. Put it that way. Most of the other albums. And would you say that Richard Manuel was a reason? I mean, he was like in full. He was 100% for the first two records, in my opinion, and then he kind of got like handicapped after a while.
Yeah, I've always been kind of a Richard Manuel fan and thought that kind of where did he go starting with the third album? He started to have less of a to be less dominant. I mean,
Yeah.
I always felt he was probably the best singer. A lot of people like Levon Helm's voice
Hmm.
and have raved about it. I've never been a fan of his voice. I don't think any of the members of the band have that great of voices, although it works with their music.
Hmm.
And Manuel, I thought, with on that first album, was a song he wrote with Dylan, "Tears of Rage."
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
that's a heavy duty song,
great song. Yeah,
and Manuel was almost positioning himself to be a really important writer.
yeah,
And I alluded earlier to Harrison hanging out with the band in late 1968. Well, come 1970, things were falling apart.
yeah,
And that was the fame factor that came in, and the band started not to be able to handle it. And maybe
yeah.
Manuel fell into that.
Yeah, he started to get into drink and drugs quite a bit apparently, and then he also, I mean, Rick Danko's famous quote was, "You ever make $1 million fast?" And he said that that just changed everything. He said as soon as the money really started rolling in, it's just changed the whole dynamic of the band.
Yeah, because Robbie Robertson wasn't a drug taker.
Right.
Pretty straight. And so was Garth Hudson, I believe.
Yes, that's
So you
true.
have the two. So Hudson, we didn't mention him, but as an instrumentalist, he's a few years older than the other guys, 4 or 5 years older, and he was the one that he got paid more, and he taught them, gave them music lessons. So
Yes.
he was a really fine player and understood arrangements and all kinds of things. And obviously Robertson had been writing. I think that the drugs came in, but the other thing that also came in is Robertson had the lion's share of the publishing. So
Yes.
he had
Yeah.
this disparity between band members and income because of the publishing. We saw that in the Beatles for sure. You see that in most bands because
Yeah.
not everybody is equally good at writing. And then things got to be difficult within the group because I think band members felt that they contributed to some of those songs and should have got credit on them in the
It's
publishing. But
Yes, yes. It's like it's only a northern song. George's
yeah, it
George
happens in every band,
George's
every
take on
band.
that, right? And
Hmm.
and honestly, you're right. You're absolutely right because what happened was they looked at the credits on the second record. Apparently, that was because in Levon Helm's book, this Wheels on Fire, he talks about that. He says that they looked at the credits on the second record and went, "What? Like everything is credited to Robbie. Like, hold on a second." And he says something like, "That's when they started pencil whipping us." You know?
Well, I think on the second album, even there's still a lot of co-writing with members. So
Right.
Robertson, a lot of the guys did get co-writing credit with Robertson on 3 or 4 songs on each of the first couple albums, I believe.
Hmm.
So it's not like they didn't get anything.
Right.
And Robertson, his position was always that while these guys were going, the drugs were a problem, and he was the guy kind of running the business.
Yes, he
And
was.
as the songwriter, he claimed that hey, whatever if their name's not on the label, they didn't contribute in a way to for them to garner credit.
Right.
He was
Right.
pretty hard line on that.
Yeah.
And his thing, he always could always say, "Well, I was the straight one in the group, so I mean, I knew what was going on."
Yeah.
So anyway, I think, and then Robertson was the first. He, I think in Helm's book, he always kind of said that Robertson forced the band to kind of retire,
Right. Right. Yeah.
which I think most groups go too long. Almost every group goes too long.
Right.
And I think the
Right.
band also went too long. I think Rock of Ages should have been the last waltz, really. That would have made more sense.
Right.
But they
Right.
kept going on and,
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, I think it was a smart move. I mean, Robbie was a smart guy, and I think he saw it. He looked around and he saw it. And honestly, Richard Manuel was having problems. I mean, he was really addicted and he was having
mhm,
issues. And he said that what happened, I think they had a couple embarrassing shows where it was like, oof, like they were just
mm.
not on. And he's like, I don't want to go out here and be like embarrassing. This is not good.
Yeah, and Helm and Danko had problems as well. I think this was the problem was heroin,
Heroin.
the three of
Yeah.
them. I mean, that's a major that
That's a
will
major
mess you
problem.
up. And then you have, cocaine was that was like having coffee at breakfast.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
the 70s, cocaine was everything ran on cocaine time, cocaine etiquette, cocaine ethics. So you add heroin to that mix. And as Todd Rundgren said, because he was the engineer on the third album, Stage Fright, he's saying, you had the top-notch booze, you had everything, high quality drugs, and that'll change you.
Yes, yes, and Robbie says something about Levon being real sleepy during stage fright. He kept taking naps
Hmm.
all of a sudden out of nowhere. He'd be like sleeping, like you're like, what's going on over here? Like, what's happening? I do think that things were creeping in by that point, and you can feel it on the record on stage fright.
Hmm.
Yeah. You can feel
Yeah.
it. It's I always think I like stage fright a lot, but it kind of there's like something you could feel. It's like the magic is starting to wane a little bit on that record.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And they still kept it together. But I mean, I guess you suck it up and there's all this money rolling in and you
Right.
try to do your best job in the studio and then you kind of have a little bit of release on the road before that gets to be too much of a grind. So I
Yeah.
mean, I wouldn't have not have liked that lifestyle. I mean,
No, not at all.
oh,
And I think
rough.
like you said, I think it was smart to do the last waltz. I think that was a great idea. Like, okay, let's just wrap this up and make a huge like goodbye for the band. I thought that was kind of cool. Like that's a
Yeah,
great
man,
idea.
they were done. I
Yeah,
mean, Levon Helm could say all he wants, but I mean, what? They're going to continue going on, have a million selling albums going? No way. They were
not
pretty
gonna
much
happen.
done. I mean, they
Yeah.
did after Rock of Ages. Let's see, they did the fourth album was Cahoots, then Rock of Ages, it was 72. That's when I thought they should have called it quits, was
Right.
72.
Right.
Because really they're a 60s hippie band that's now entering the disco period. I mean,
Right.
not many bands can pull this off. I mean, obviously the Dead did. And there's another band that kind of that country flavoring too, and that more earthy feeling. But the album after Rock of Ages, which was the double live album, was a covers album.
Oh,
Um,
Moondog
Dog
Matinee.
Matinee, yeah.
Right.
So I'm like, well, clearly they're out of material. Or they're
Yes. I mean, that's just like, come on, a covers record. Yeah.
of a double live album and then a covers album. I mean, come
Yeah.
on. And then they
Yeah.
do the album backing up Dylan, Planet Waves. I mean, they
Right.
were done. They were done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
They
the
were.
rest of it, the couple albums came out after were kind of like a money grab, I guess you'd say. And
Yeah. They were on
it's not
life.
that it's not that like there's not good stuff on there because there's still the band. They can
Yeah.
still, bring it occasionally, but not like the dream was over.
No, no, I tend to agree. I mean, you can tell you just watch their trajectory and you can see it. It's not too hard to see. And I think that, like you said, there were some moments on what is it, Northern Lights, Southern Cross.
Hmm.
There's some moments on that record that are pretty good. But yeah, I think had to work hard to get, like they had to really work hard to get like some good moments going
Yeah,
at
yeah,
that point.
they had to work.
Yeah, it
It
wasn't
not
coming
some
easily.
it wasn't coming easily, right?
No, no,
See, and
and
that's where bands sometimes falter. Look at the Beatles. Those
yeah,
last couple albums, they actually had to work really hard,
yeah,
and it wasn't coming as natural. And in the 70s, when bands were doing like one album a year, as opposed to the Beatles who were doing two albums a year, that gave them a little time away from each other because
yeah.
the Eagles hated each other. Most of these bands hated each other
Right,
for a
right,
while
right.
because they didn't really grow up together like brothers like the Beatles did.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
having a little time uh, away from the grind is
Yes.
always helpful.
Yeah, they always say that like if they had waited, if the Eagles had not just if just taken more time off after Hotel California, because I think they were like just the long run was a horrible experience for everybody apparently. So
Yeah, there you got drugs and egos and all that. I mean, they were at the top, So I
yeah,
mean, they had 2 years to make the long run. I mean, it's not like
no,
they didn't
that's
have
true.
time,
That's true. You're right. That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
So, but and then like you said, the Beatles, same thing. I mean, White Album was difficult, and Let It Be was really difficult. So
And somehow the Beatles, I mean, if you look at Let It Be, I mean, you had three number one songs on there. You had a Grammy winner. You had a film. You had a album. I mean, all in roughly 17 working days.
yes,
I
that's
counted the
what gets
days.
me. That's always what blows me away, and
I mean,
that's
you can't take that away from them. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, you said, okay,
yeah,
you want to call it their worst album, all right, but you look at
yeah,
this list of accomplishments, and they
yeah.
they paid for it. They really paid for it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I loved. I probably loved the most. And probably my biggest revelation from the Get Back movie was that they kept showing the calendar and they kept showing like the days that they were
Yeah,
working. I'm like, it's like not that long at all.
right, right.
It's
Yeah,
crazy. It was like such a short period. Like it's like 17, like you said, 17 days.
yeah.
So it's just that's insane. That's incredible. So considering, I mean, like you
Mhm.
said, okay, it's a weaker Beatles record, but it's still got a lot of great music on it.
It does.
Yeah.
And you got to take the perspective of the whole project. And like you said, the band, um, the whole post Last Waltz era, or the last couple albums and then the Last Waltz, it was a period of winding down.
Yeah.
And some of the guys didn't want to end it that way, but I guess it wasn't their choice. If you don't have Robbie Robertson in the group, who's going to write the songs?
Right, right. And yeah, because I think Jonathan Taplin said in one of the documentaries, he said something like, Robbie was the one up in the morning with an acoustic guitar working on songs. I mean, he
Hmm.
was the one, he was the guy working at it. Nobody else was really doing that.
Yeah.
So,
So, I mean, you got to give him credit for that.
yeah,
And I always felt like the band, they clearly went too long. They always felt to me like in the 60s, they came out with their first album so late.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
but they're, I guess technically, I consider them a 60s band, but most of their output was in the 70s.
right.
And it didn't seem to fit with the times as much, not as much as CSNY or some of the other singer-songwriters. They were still kind of their own thing.
Yeah.
So, that's why it was easy for me to see them end it sooner than it did. It just seemed more comfortable.
That's an interesting theory of like Rock of Ages being the last album, like being the last waltz. That probably would have been like people would even like revere them even more because it would have been like shorter period. You know what I
It would
mean?
have been more Beatle-like because they
Yeah.
would have been more closer to the top, I
Right.
think.
Right. Yeah,
Because
exactly.
Cahoots is a pretty good album. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a pretty good rock album for them. I mean, I just
Yeah.
was listening to it before to prepare for this discussion. Like, wow, yeah, this is better than I remembered it. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the Cahoots, it's funny because you always think, oh, Cahoots is bad, it's not very good, and then you listen to it, and especially the first side. The first side is actually very strong. Um,
there is a song on Cahoots called Thinking Out Loud. And I swear Harrison used this as a blueprint for some of his later 70s work. Listen to the song Thinking Out Loud, and it calls to like some of Harrison's, mid to late 70s work.
oh, interesting. I will check
So I
that
think he
out.
was, I think he was still paying close attention to their stuff, and he probably hung out with them here and there when he was in the States and vice versa.
Right, right. Yeah, he definitely was a big fan, and he definitely made it known that he was a huge fan. So
Hmm.
it's pretty cool to have George Harrison as a big fan.
Oh yeah, that doesn't hurt.
Doesn't hurt at all. So, well, I don't know. I think we've gone on a couple tangents here, but I think we've covered it. It's just kind of just a fun discussion about the band. I just wanted to do some content on them. So, is there any last words you have for you? Any last thoughts?
Let's see. Last thoughts. The only thought I'll bring up, there was on the first album, I forgot to mention, there's a bonus track on the CD called is it Ferdinand the Imposter?
Yes, yes.
That was a song that the band recorded before they really found their sound. I think the Eric Jacobson was the producer, and he produced the Love and Spoonful. So it's the band produced like the Love and Spoonful. It's a great song, but it doesn't sound like what we know as the band's first album, Big Pink. You know, it really sounds so much more like a pop group.
Right.
And
Right.
that they almost fell into that. They could have recorded with the wrong producer or producer that would have made them sound like everybody else, but instead John Simon was the guy they wound up with, and they got music from Big Pink, which was a complete departure from anything in the pop world.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another thing that's my last thought is that John Simon is kind of I mean, talk about someone who's like in the story of the band is somebody who's probably a key person because I think he really helped them to get their vision in a great way, you know?
Yeah, he must have. He doesn't get a lot of talk, but he has to have been uh, miking. I don't know who engineered that first album, but the microphone placement and all that was, I mean, that all had to be part of it, and he had to be leading all that, I would think. So yeah, he deserves credit.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think because he was involved with the first two records. Those are my two favorites. So
Yeah.
it's something there's something there. So there you go. But yeah, I think we covered it pretty well. Yeah, this is I will say that I do like the bonus because I have this on obviously I always say I like a band when I've got it on multiple formats, but this is the remaster and it's got like you said it's got all the bonus tracks on it. And I
hmm
think there are some songs that to me, I mean, wow, they could have made the record like Yazie's Street Scandal I kind of like. Katie's Been Gone's a pretty cool song. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff on the bonus tracks on here too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but Matt, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, Tom. This was great. I don't get to do this too often, but I always enjoy it when I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully we'll do it again sometime. It'd be fun.
My pleasure.
Yep, yep. So that's it, people. I hope you liked it. Let us know what you think in the comments. Like I always read the comments, so let us know what you think. I mean, maybe someone might say, "You guys are crazy. Cahoots is the best record by a long shot." Who knows? I mean, you just never know what you're going to get in the comments. So, um, but uh, but please hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Curless Mania. Take care, everybody.